Colin Liddell, and this is the Shortpod, a brief and succinct podcast commenting on the events and issues of the day. And today it is the 4th of August, 2024. Currently, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland is 5th in the Olympic medals table. Meanwhile, back home in the UK, towns up and down the country, but mainly in the north, are being shaken by riots and disturbances of various kinds. The police are out in force. Large crowds are milling around. Hotels housing refugees are under siege. Various premises are being looted or set on fire. Journalists are scuttling around in fear of their safety. It's all kicking off. But is it? Really, the whole thing is completely disorganized. It's incredibly shambolic. The anti-immigration message that is animating the protesters/rioters is being toxified. And there's no clear end point for this upsurge of activity and emotion. The problem here is that the white working class in Britain is a headless snake. In the old days, the Labour Party used to be the head, giving some sort of organisational nous to the working class entity. But now the Labour Party has effectively been taken over by middle-class woke elites. It has become distanced from its working class roots, and it can no longer serve as the leadership nexus of the working class. Other attempts to develop a leadership cadre have been quashed. In the 1990s and the zeros, we saw the rise of the British National Party at a time of peak globalism. This ran into all sorts of obstacles, and the party was subverted and contained and then managed to implode. So the early potential of genuine working class organisation was destroyed, leaving the white working class, especially the lower white working class, a leaderless, amorphous mass of emotion and discontent. This level of disorganisation means that it is incredibly easy to subvert for nefarious purposes. We have seen that grifters and scumbags like Tommy Robinson, various Kremlin operations, etc., have been able to whip up the white working class in Britain from time to time. And this is the latest example of that. In the past, Muslims have had the same problems, but they've been able to develop their own organizations, their own groups and lobbies, and they're much better organized than the white working class. This has been demonstrated in the riots. As soon as mosques were being threatened, the Muslim populations of these northern English towns quickly organized and mobilized and rallied in their defense. These groups also have connections to mainstream politics, so that the main political parties have to consider the interests of the Muslim population. The white working class people that we see rioting in these northern cities don't have anything like that. So they are completely alienated, they are completely stigmatized. It is possible that Reform UK might be able to become a kind of leadership cadre for this group, but Reform UK is still organisationally extremely immature, and it seems to be run by a bunch of dubious grifters who probably won't stick around. Also, Reform UK will be completely hamstrung by the UK election system. Right now they have 4 MPs out of 16% of the votes, with the Tories in opposition. That share of the vote is entirely likely to collapse, and so you can expect Reform UK to kind of shrivel up and die unless they pull off a minor miracle. So what's going to come out of these riots? Probably just increasing levels of steady dysfunction in various British towns and cities. In these northern towns, you're going to have a kind of four-way standoff. You're going to have migrants, new migrants, versus local whites, versus local established Muslim populations, versus police. So you're going to have this very kind of deeply divided society where nobody likes or trusts each other, low social trust. This will then lead to increasing deterioration of the social base, vandalism, litter, poor services, bad communications, poor retail options, welfarism, a lack of jobs, etc., etc. Effectively, the UK is in the process of creating the British equivalent of a lot of black American ghettos, where the economically sub-active or inactive part of the population will increasingly be, quotation marks, warehoused. In some respects, their status will start to resemble the proles in George Orwell's novel 1984. But at least in that case, they had plenty of cheap victory gin to keep them happy. Britain's Chavo zone, shall we call it, will be kept going on welfare and cheap drugs, with the police being either too busy or turning a blind eye to bother about things like that. So what I'm describing here is the inbuilt, baked-in-the-cake, natural trajectory of the forces on the ground. Is there a solution to this problem? Is there a way of breaking out of this downward spiral? Right now, it's very hard to see one. We have a large, over-emotional, low IQ group that is in a very kind of reactive mode to everything, and which is being freely hacked and manipulated and subverted by all sorts of dubious online influences. So it's very hard to see how anything good can come out of this situation. But among the various people enmeshed in this mess, there are, of course, good, intelligent, bright, young people who have the potential to find solutions. I would say the solutions look something like this. The people in those areas with the potential to build something better, first of all, they have to de-emotionalize. Once you become over-emotional, you become very, very susceptible to all sorts of fake news, false ideas, and various kinds of bullshit. This is probably the hardest thing for people to do nowadays. If they can de-emotionalize, the next step is education. People have to research, analyze, understand objectively their position, the forces that create their situation, and how things in general work. From education comes consciousness, and from consciousness you then develop discipline, and then hopefully from that basis you can move on to organization. What form that organization will take remains to be seen, but there clearly needs to be some form of organization to control and lead and advocate for the people in the Chavo zone. Once you have organizations, then you start to have a little bit of leverage on power. In the same way that the mainstream parties have to kind of pander to these organized Muslim groups, they would also have to pander to organized white working class groups. Once you have organizations that can control the voting blocks in these areas, then you will be able to make alliances. And then those alliances would naturally be with forces, political parties, and groups that could help your position. So there are no easy fixes to this problem. The likelihood is that things will just continue on in a largely dysfunctional direction, and that the more functional part of the country will try to warehouse the problem. But there needs to be a kind of authentic white working class grassroots response to that. Over and out.